Hello and welcome to yet another tutorial by Davies Media Design. My name is Michael Davies and today we're going to be going over what is new in GIMP 2.10.4. This is the latest update for GIMP 2.10 at the time of this tutorial. Just came out earlier today, really just a few minutes ago, and so I'm going to be showing you guys what's been updated in this latest version of GIMP. But before we get into that, of course, I want to direct you guys over to my website at daviesmediadesign.com. As always, we've got tons of GIMP video and text tutorials on here, including Project Translate and our Pull of the Week, so definitely check that out. You can also enroll in our GIMP photo editing course from beginner to pro photo retoucher, and our course is now a bestseller, so thank you for everybody who's enrolled in our course. I'll include a link to this as well as all of the relevant links from this tutorial in the description. So the first new feature has to do with the measure tool, and you guys will already know what this is because it's been around in GIMP for many years. But here's the measure tool right here. What's new about this is the straighten feature that now comes with the measure tool. And so this allows you to basically straighten an image based on an angle that you draw with the measure tool. So for example, GIMP always uses the horizon lines in images as an example for how this tool can be used. So basically I can click and drag this measure tool, and you'll see as I drag, it shows the angle that I'm dragging from the start point to the end point here. And so this horizon line I purposely made crooked before this tutorial, but basically I can draw the measure tool parallel to this horizon line. And once I've done that, I'll release my mouse and I'll go ahead and click the straighten button here. And now GIMP has automatically straightened this image so that it basically rotates along the angle that we created with the measure tool. So now this horizon is nice and straight. Obviously we would have to crop this afterwards, so I grab my crop tool and go ahead and draw where I want to crop out the transparencies that are sticking through here in the corners. So I'll just go ahead and click, and now we have a nice straight horizon line. The reason they did this is because you can do this with the rotate tool, but you have to kind of eyeball this and just estimate where the straight horizon is and hit rotate. And you might be a few degrees off if you do that. So this measurement tool just allows you to draw a line directly parallel to whatever it is you're trying to straighten. So the next feature is the Asynchronous Fonts Loading feature, which is more of a development feature that runs in the background. It's not something that an everyday user is going to notice really. But basically when you add new fonts to GIMP, especially in Mac or Windows versions, it takes GIMP a little bit longer to load on startup with all those new fonts because the third-party font loader that GIMP uses on the back end of GIMP has to refresh the font cache every time you add new fonts. Well, now the new font loader allows for fonts to load up in the background. So basically your GIMP can open up while those new fonts are still loading, while that cache is being refreshed, and you can continue using GIMP as normal. But if you try to use the text tool while those fonts are still loading, it's not going to work until all the fonts have finished downloading. So in a nutshell, that just makes it quicker for GIMP to load for people who use a lot of custom fonts or install their own fonts into GIMP. The next feature was a new feature that was added to GIMP 2.10, and that is the dashboard. So if I go to Windows, Dockable Dialogues, and come to the bottom here, you'll see something called Dashboard. And I go over this in my top 10 new features in GIMP 2.10 tutorial, but essentially they've added a new memory widget to this, so now this allows you to see the memory usage of GIMP compared to how much memory is available and the overall memory that you have on your computer. So this just allows you to see how much memory GIMP is taking up while you're working. The next feature addition is one that I think is very important because it's pretty common, and so I'll come over here to this image, and this is the Unsharp Mask. This is my favorite sharpening tool, and it's a very common sharpening tool. If you guys are into photography, then you've used this feature before. So I'll go to Filters, Enhance, and usually you would go to Unsharp Mask, but now they've changed it to say Sharpen, and I think that's just an effort to make it easier to find for new users or people who aren't expert photographers, because Unsharp Mask kind of makes it sound like you're taking away the sharpness, but really you're adding sharpness when you're using the Unsharp Mask. So now when I click on the Sharpen tool, you'll also notice that it no longer uses scale or standard deviation. It's now actually reverted back to the legacy radius, amount, and threshold adjustments. And so this is what the Unsharp Mask used to be before they updated it for 2.10 using the Gaggle filter. So here's the Gaggle sign right here. I have a tutorial on what Gaggle is if you're not sure what that is. So basically this just makes it easier for people to transition between the new Unsharp Mask filter between GIMP 2.8.22 and GIMP 2.10 and newer. And it does that by essentially making these adjustments the same as what they were previously. Now apparently, even though they've reverted back to these adjustments, the Unsharp Mask works a little bit better now than it used to, so I think it kind of combines the best of both worlds and makes GIMP overall a little bit more user-friendly. So I've just added some random settings here, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK to apply that new Unsharp Mask, which is now called Sharpen. The next feature is that they've made improvements to the Photoshop document loader. So basically, if you're taking documents from Photoshop and loading them into GIMP, GIMP now supposedly does a better job of loading those Photoshop documents. So the GIMP team says that they still don't support adjustment layers yet, and that's because they simply haven't added adjustment layers as a feature to GIMP. That's something that they say is going to come out with GIMP 3.2. At least that's the current estimate. However, GIMP can now create merged and pre-composited Photoshop document files, and those can be loaded so long as the documents were saved with maximum compatibility checked within Photoshop. So I'll show you what I mean by that. I've got Photoshop on my computer here. So here is a Photoshop template document. So you'll see over here there's several layer groups and probably some other features within this document. I haven't dived into it a whole lot, to be honest. But what I'm going to do is change the color profile of this to RGB, because right now this is a CMYK document. And then I'm going to export it in a way that makes it possible to export it into GIMP. So I'll go ahead and go to Image, Mode, and change this to RGB color. And I'll just click OK when I'm prompted. And so that has converted this into RGB, and remember, GIMP is an RGB color profile-based software. So now I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'll just name this GIMP test document, and I'll hit Save. And this is the Maximize Compatibility dialog that'll pop up while you're saving. This is what I was talking about. GIMP will only open this document as the merged and pre-composited Photoshop document that I was telling you guys about if you have this option checked. So go ahead and check OK. And so that has been exported to this folder here. And so I'm going to right click on this test document that we just created, go to Open With, and choose GIMP. And when I do that, you'll see a Convert to RGB Working Space dialog pop up. This is just asking you to convert the sRGB color space within Photoshop to GIMP's native sRGB color space. So go ahead and hit Convert. And now this Photoshop document has been opened up into GIMP. And if I come over here to my Layers panel, you'll see I now have the layer groups in here, or the layer groups are still in here. The only thing is that GIMP says that it still will not import guides into GIMP and some other features from Photoshop documents, but apparently the ability to open up PSD files has been improved with GIMP 2.10.4. So the next new feature found in GIMP 2.10.4 is an update to the Recursive Transform operation. So if you guys watched my What's New in GIMP 2.10.2 tutorial, you'll remember the Recursive Transform tool allows you to perform multiple transformations. And before I get into demonstrating this, I'm just going to resize my image real quick because this is a pretty large image. So I'll go to Image, Scale Image, and I'll just change this to 1920 by 1280 and hit Scale. Alright, so I'll grab my zoom tool and zoom in here. And now I'm going to hit the / on my keyboard and type in recursive. And again, this is our search feature here that allows us to search for tools within GIMP. And I'll just double click to apply that tool to our active layer. So again, here is the Recursive Transform tool. I can scale this down, and it's going to create 3 different scaling down effects here. That's what an iteration is. It's just another instance of the scale down I just performed. And so if I move this to the center here, you can see it creates this cool effect where it looks like this image is just fading into the back here. And I can also, for example, rotate this, and it'll just rotate each different iteration. So before, this was all we could do with the Recursive Transform tool. We could add iterations and change the first iteration, but then we would hit OK and that would be it. Well, now we can do this, and then we have some options down here. For example, I can add an additional transformation here. So if I click the plus sign, now you'll see another set of tools here, which is the second recursive transformation. And so I can basically do whatever I want to the second transformation here. I could bring it to a totally different part of the image. I can use the shear tool and the perspective tool. So I'm just doing all sorts of random stuff to this layer here. I can rotate it a little bit. So we still haven't solidified or applied that first transformation we did. We added a second transformation. I can add a third transformation, which will be independent of the first two. I can duplicate that transformation I just did here if I wanted to, or I can delete that last transformation we did, for example. Let me go ahead and just add a transformation again. So I'll scale this one down, rotate it, add a couple iterations, and go ahead and hit OK. And we could check out our memory usage while that's working. So you could see that we're using up a little bit more memory now. But now you can see we applied multiple recursive transformations here, all within the same window. So if I hit Control Z, it'll undo both of those. Control Y, you can see those two recursive transformations applied again. There are a few other small items or back-end items that the GIMP team has updated. One thing they've updated is the pixelized gaggle operation. They've also performed some work on Babel within GIMP 2.10.4. And I think those are a lot of behind-the-scenes things that everyday users don't typically concern themselves with, so I'm not really going to be going over those. But two other important announcements that I think came with this announcement was the fact that GIMP is still working on GIMP 3.0, although they have claimed that they keep coming across outdated items within the back end of GIMP. And so they've been spending a little bit of extra time updating those items, and I'm sure some of the features that we've gone over in this tutorial today were some of the things they were working on. And they've also stated that they're working on Mac downloaders for GIMP 2.10 and newer. So I know a lot of Mac users are getting frustrated because they haven't put out a way to download the newest versions of GIMP yet. But the GIMP team is working on getting those downloaders out so you guys can enjoy the newer versions of GIMP. Alright, so that's it for this tutorial. Hopefully you guys liked it. If you did, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/daviesmediadesign. You can also visit our website at daviesmediadesign.com, and you can enroll in our GIMP photo editing course from beginner to pro photo retoucher, and I'll include a link to that as well as all the relevant links from this tutorial in the description. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.